Boyd's Tobacco and Elegant Gifts would like to welcome Manuel Quesada to our store here in Paso Robles this afternoon. Manuel, welcome to Boyd's Tobacco.
Thank you for having me, Charles. It's a pleasure always.
Manuel is the president of Quesada Cigars in the Dominican Republic, and he is the longtime vice president of Pro Cigar in the Dominican Republic. Pro Cigar is made up of the major manufacturers in the Dominican Republic, and he has served in that position for over 20 years. There is no one more knowledgeable in the world of premium cigars than Manolo Quesada, and I'll use his Manolo name instead of Manuel for this purpose today. Manolo, I'd like you to give us a little background on how you got started in the business and exactly how it all came to pass.
Our family was established in Cuba, 1876, by my great-grandfather. But in Cuba, we were not manufacturers. We were leaf warehousers. We would buy tobacco from the farms, sort, select, ferment, pack, and then sell as raw materials for the factories throughout the world. After we donated our earthly goods to the new government in 1960, we moved to Dominican Republic because we had been dealing with Dominican Republic since 1939. And we had been buying tobacco in Dominican Republic, so we knew the people, we knew the regions, the tobaccos, and we moved from Cuba via Miami to Dominican Republic in 1961 and been there since. In 1974, they were having problems in Miami with the factories that were making handmade cigars because the cigar makers were getting a little older and they couldn't work because of retirement. They had to be paid under the table. Simultaneously with that fact, the free zones, the industrial free zones, began in Dominican Republic. And it was suggested to the family that we open a cigar factory in one of the free zones in Santiago, our town, and make cigars for a company that was making cigars in Miami, who would then become distributors, and we would become the manufacturers. In that deal, we also kept the right to make brands for ourselves. Not only for the distribution center in Miami, but also brands that we would sell from the factory to other distributors in the United States. In the family raffle, I was the one that won the raffle, and they told me to go open the factory. They gave me $200, 4 bales of tobacco, and an empty building. And with a table, a phone, and a chair, and 3 cigar makers, no power, we had to make cigars by the windows to take advantage of the sunlight. We started in June of 1974. And to today, thankfully, we're still around making cigars. We now have power, and now we don't have to sit by the windows anymore. I'm the 4th generation of the family in tobacco, 1st generation in cigar making, but the 5th generation in tobacco is already working with me, and they have now become the 2nd generation of manufacturers in the family.
Isn't that beautiful?
It's basically, in a nutshell, our story. And I would like to comment on something you said earlier, that there are many of my colleagues that are, if not as knowledgeable as I am, they may even have a little more knowledge than I do. There are some that are excellent cigar makers, and my hat's off to them as well.
Thank you. The brand names that you control, that you have worldwide rights to, are what?
The brands that we control, Charles, are Quesada and Casa Magna. Fonseca, which is our brand in the United States, is a Cuban brand, and we do not own the rights to the world for that brand, as Cuba does not own the rights to the United States for that brand. So I cannot leave the United States with Fonseca, but they cannot come into the United States with Fonseca. And that's how it stands. Quesada and Casa Magna are not Cuban brands, of course, so we have the right to go anywhere in the world with those brands, and we do.
The Quesada name now is utilized on many different product lines.
Yes, sir.
That you manufacture.
Yes.
Could you go through those for us?
Quesada has had limited editions and ongoing editions. The limited editions have been, for example, the Jalapa, which was some tobacco that we had from Jalapa, Nicaragua, and it was an experiment that the Plasencia family did with Connecticut, one of the first crops that was ever grown in Jalapa. And Henke from Davidoff and I bought the whole thing. And I just kept the tobacco in the factory until the fifth generation decided that Quesada should be a name that we should put on cigars. That started with the Q35, which was Quesada 35 was the very first Quesada cigar in the market. And that was a product of pressure from the young five, because I was still a little hesitant to come out with a Quesada cigar. But they won, and it was very successful, thankfully. And after that, then the Jalapa was another limited edition of the Quesadas. We have done the Oktoberfest, which is a seasonal cigar, which comes out once a year from August to November to celebrate the Marzen-style beers of Oktoberfest. And we blended that cigar particularly for those styles of beers that come out during the Oktoberfest celebration.
Now you do a Quesada España as well?
Yes, we do. And that was an interesting, again, no good deed goes unpunished. We had made the blend to compete with products in Spain. And at the Pro Cigar Festival that year, the young ones decided to give out the Quesada Españas as a tasting for the participants of the festival. There were some retailers from the United States, and they're all smoking and saying, when are these getting to the U.S.? And we told them, no, unfortunately, this is a product that's going to Spain, and it's not going to the U.S. Well, they created some sort of a revolt, and we had to steal production from Spain and start bringing it into the United States. It's still a very limited product in the United States, but it's a blend that I am very proud of and I'm very happy with.
Now, several years ago, you had a new cigar enter the market. It was called, I believe, Casa Magna, Colorado.
Yes, sir, it was.
That was rated by Cigar Aficionado as the #1 cigar of the year
Yes,
in
sir, it was.
2008.
Yes, sir, it was.
Were you prepared for that rating?
No, sir, I was not. I was not.
What happens when that happens?
Well, we were told that January 6th of '09, and the market found out, of course, immediately. And we had inventory both in Miami and in Nicaragua. And by March, we had sold out of the inventory, and the production that was coming online was not ready yet. So April and May were very difficult months because we had no product. Because I refused to sell cigars that weren't ready to be sold. And that was an economical sacrifice that we made. But if we would have wanted to make a lot of money during the boom, we'd have made all the money in the world, retired, and closed the factory, and we wouldn't be here today. But unfortunately, or fortunately rather, that is not the idea. Our idea is we have something that we love, we have something that we're proud of, we have new people coming into the factory, my nephews, my nieces, my daughters, and they're interested, and they're showing great passion and great humility in learning, which is very important. And it's their next, that's when I turn the keys over to them sometime down the road, and they'll continue the business.
Now let me ask you a real important question. When you came out with Casa Magna, that was made in Nicaragua instead of the Dominican.
Yes, sir.
Why was that done?
We had a representation of a Nicaraguan brand. And in 2008, in February, we were told that the owner of that brand was taking it away from us and going somewhere else to distribute. At that time, that Nicaraguan brand was a big part of our portfolio in Miami. So I decided that I needed a Nicaraguan cigar to supplant the hole that was going to be created by the going away of this brand that we had represented for 8 or 9 years. And the Plasencias had offered me the possibility of making cigars a number of years before, and my answer had been, I can't, because I have this brand that I represent from Nicaragua, and it would not be good of me to create a competitor in Nicaragua for a brand that I represent. But don't close the door, because you never know when that door, we might need to sneak into that door. And sure enough, February we were announced that we were going to lose that representation. We were told on a Thursday, end of February. That Sunday I was in Nicaragua. And I knocked on the Plasencia's door and I said, remember that conversation we had a couple of years ago? Well, the door has to be open now. If I may I make cigars here? And they said, go into the factory and do whatever you want. And it took me from 6 in the morning to 7 in the evening to get the blend done. And the reason that was so quick is because I knew the tobaccos in the regions. When you start blending with different tobaccos from different countries, the learning process is a little longer. But with Nicaragua, I was aware of all the regions and all the seeds, so it was a lot easier, and by 7 o'clock I had the blend. And I told the Plasencias, these are the slicers, start making cigars. What's the name? I said, I have no idea. We'll come up with a name soon. And during the CAA convention in Puerto Vallarta, we came up with a name. And we took it to market in May of '08, just before the IPCPR. Featured it at the IPCPR, and it was doing quite well until December. And then in January, we were told that we had the #1 rating, and everything just blew up in our faces.
How does that cigar sell overall today in relationship to the rest of your portfolio?
It's still doing very well, and it still commands a large percentage of our portfolio.
I have to tell you, of all the cigars that we have here in our store, that cigar happens to be, in my opinion, the one that closest resemblance to a Cuban in terms of flavor profile. It is phenomenal.
Well, I am happy to hear that. We did not blend it with that purpose in mind, but I have to agree with you. We came up quite close.
Quite